Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit, where geopolitics meets gear ratios and strategy hums like a finely tuned V8. In today's episode, we're heading into a diplomatic drag race between two economic giants, Canada and the United States, as they roar toward an August 1st showdown. With President Trump revving up a massive 35% tariff threat on Canadian imports, Prime Minister Mark Carney isn't exactly slamming the brakes. Instead, he's quietly downshifting into a calculated maneuver, leveraging everything from fertilizer to fuel. Let's pop the hood on this escalating trade war and see how potash, pipelines, and steel are shifting Canada's powertrain. Potash power, Canada's secret weapon under the soil. They don't call it pink gold for nothing. Potash, a mineral rich in potassium and critical to crop growth, has suddenly become Canada's torque-rich torque wrench in this trade standoff. As Trump guns for tariffs, Canada's strategy turns to agriculture's unsung MVP, fertilizer. Potash is the lifeblood of modern farming, and Canada holds the global pole position with over 30% of global production, thanks largely to the mineral-rich fields of Saskatchewan. Meanwhile, the U.S.? It produces a paltry 400,000 metric tons per year, yet consumes more than 5.3 million. That means U.S. farmers are pit-dependent on foreign supply, particularly Canada's. And with Russia and Belarus throttled by sanctions and instability, Canadian potash isn't just a commodity, it's a lifeline. Canadian lawmakers, including Elizabeth May, are now nudging Carney to consider slamming the export brakes or building a national potash reserve. The message? If Washington wants to weaponize tariffs, Ottawa can play that game too, and aim straight at America's food supply chain. And let's not forget, food inflation is already burning hot. Disrupt fertilizer, and that heat becomes a wildfire. Unlike tech or cars, potash isn't easily rerouted. Threats to restrict it are already shaking America's ag sector, and Carney hasn't even touched the clutch yet. But Canada's trade recalibration doesn't stop beneath the soil. Next, it's heading underground and underwater with pipelines built for power projection. Rerouting the fuel flow, Canada's pipeline pivot. While Trump fires off tariff threats, Canada's counter is quieter, but far more strategic. Prime Minister Carney has approved a major pipeline linking Alberta's oil sands directly to the Pacific coast, allowing Canadian crude to bypass U.S. refineries and reach booming Asian markets. It's not retaliation, it's realignment. Currently, a staggering 97% of Canadian oil and gas exports head south, tying producers to U.S. buyers and squeezing profit margins. But with this new east-west pipeline and the $40 billion LNG Canada terminal in British Columbia, Ottawa is breaking free. In fact, Canada's first direct LNG shipment to Asia already slashed delivery times compared to Gulf Coast routes. Economist Jeff Rubin sees it clearly. This is about securing trade routes and staking Canada's claim as a true energy heavyweight. And while the U.S. still produces over 13 million barrels daily, it remains dependent on reliable Canadian imports, especially in the Midwest and Northeast. With global options expanding, Canada gains serious negotiating torque. If Trump's tariffs hit, Carney won't just protest. He'll reroute barrels, not just rhetoric. Before we delve deeper, take a pit stop and smash that like and subscribe button. It keeps the engines running here at Piston Pundit and brings you fresh auto-geopolitical insights straight to your feed. With fuel lines rerouted, let's check out how Canada is reforging its steel backbone amid tariff tremors. Forging steel strategy, from shock to shield. Trump's steel tariff, a jarring 50% surcharge slapped down in June, rattled the Canadian auto and construction sectors like a bent axle. Exports nosedived, layoffs piled up, and supply chains seized. But instead of retaliating with equal fury, Carney played the long game, turning crisis into catalyst. Rather than fight tariff fire with tariff fire, Canada introduced new tariff rate quotas starting August 1st. These will cap steel imports across 5 product categories. Non-free trade agreement, FTA nations exceeding 2024 benchmarks will get slapped with a 50% surtax. Even some FTA partners, minus the US and Mexico, will now hit a quota wall. And Chinese origin steel? A 25% surtax is already revving up. On top of that, Ottawa is now requiring domestically sourced steel for all major public infrastructure and defense builds, with exceptions only for cost or availability. It's a policy piston firing on multiple cylinders: national security, industrial stability, and trade pressure. Backing the shift, Carney's team has funneled $1 billion from the Strategic Innovation Fund to modernize steel manufacturing, plus direct worker support and cheap financing for the industry. The result? A blueprint for long-term resilience, not short-term retaliation. But the steel story is just the chassis. Next comes the bodywork, Canada's auto sector and how it's bracing for impact. Cross-border car chaos, how tariffs threaten the auto assembly line. While steel and potash take the spotlight, Canada's auto industry is quietly navigating a minefield. Trump's looming 35% tariff threat has put nearly 1.5 million Canadian-assembled vehicles and the 80% shipped to the US squarely in the crosshairs. Worse, a separate 25% tariff on Canadian auto imports has resurfaced, echoing the 2018 threats that rattled the industry. In response, Prime Minister Carney is proactively negotiating carve-outs for vehicles, batteries, and rare earths, critical components in the rapidly growing EV supply chain. Canada isn't just building cars, it's building leverage. Major EV investments from Stellantis and Volkswagen position the country as a key player in the future of North American auto manufacturing. These projects aren't just about job creation, they're bargaining chips. Meanwhile, US automakers like Ford and GM still rely heavily on Canadian plants for trucks and SUVs. Disruptions could trigger price hikes and delivery delays, amplifying supply chain headaches. Ottawa's message? Keep auto goods tariff-free under USMCA, or risk stalling both economies. In this trade standoff, even your next pickup might become part of the political horsepower. But beyond defending old trade routes, Canada is quietly paving new ones, routes that don't rely on Washington's green light. Carving new roads, Canada's shift from reliance to resilience. While U.S. threats echo louder with each press briefing, Carney's government is methodically redrawing the map, focusing less on counterpunching and more on carving new lanes. To keep doors open in Washington, Canada paused its digital services tax and extended diplomatic warmth to visiting bipartisan senators. At the same time, Carney is making quiet moves to secure quotas on softwood lumber and maintain dialogue. But underneath the handshake optics is a strategic departure from old dependencies. Carney's message is subtle but firm. Cooperation is welcome, but not mandatory. He's already met with nearly 10% of the US Senate this year, not just to smooth things over, but to prepare for every possible turn on the track. Behind the scenes, Canada is accelerating new partnerships: LNG shipments to North Asia, oil exports to India, steel to the EU. The trade engine is diversifying. Trump's latest tariff threats, some based on dubious justifications like linking fentanyl trafficking to the Canadian border, are being met with calm resilience. Canada isn't scrambling. It's steering, steadily, strategically, and with one eye firmly on the future. So what's the final verdict on this high-stakes automotive trade saga? Let's downshift into our conclusion. Final lap: Canada's engineered response to economic turbulence. This isn't just a trade spat. It's a quiet revolution driven by logistics, leverage, and long-game engineering. While Trump fires off tariff threats like backfiring exhaust, Canada is tightening bolts behind the scenes, strategically stockpiling potash, redirecting energy exports, and fortifying domestic steel. It's torque over talk. From potash fields in Saskatchewan to LNG terminals on the Pacific, Canada is quietly rebalancing the equation. Whether or not a deal is signed by August 1st, the real shift has already begun, toward a more independent and globally connected economy. Now it's your turn behind the wheel. Is potash truly Canada's most underrated trade weapon? Could EV investments and energy rerouting give Canada the edge? Has Canada finally charted a path out of US economic dependence? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your answers, stories, or predictions in the comments. For the latest updates on the automotive world and more in-depth analysis, subscribe to Piston Pundit and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned because this engine's just getting warmed up. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.